What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner, and I'm a sports writer at KSL.com. It is Sunday, October 26th. We're coming to the end of yet another month, folks, as we head out of spooky season this next week and into the holidays, I would say. You know, if you take notice at your local grocery stores, etc., Home Depots, you'll notice that they've already changed. You know, Halloween hasn't even happened yet. It's this Friday. But there are already Christmas decorations for sale. Wherever you're looking for them, you can find them already. And we're 2 months out, almost exactly. So plenty of time to prepare for that. But in the meantime, we are in the thick of it, folks. Plenty of news, updates, things to talk about in the world of sports as it pertains to our KSL audience here in Utah. And let's just go ahead and start with the most recent and hottest story, because that is the Utah Mammoth, folks. They are at the top of the NHL right now, thanks to a 7-game win streak that they are currently on. 4 games at home, 3 games on the road so far on that win streak, and they're looking good. The first 2 games on this road trip in particular. Just coming out the gate hot. Logan Cooley, a hat trick in the first period. Earlier this week in St. Louis, gets another 2-goal first period. Then in Minnesota, where he actually went to college, fun fact, for a year before getting drafted into the NHL. And then just today, on a back-to-back. So Minnesota last night, and then today playing Winnipeg up in Canada. First trip up to Canada this season for the Mammoth, and they got the job done with a 3-2 victory over the Jets, who were just right there, also at the top of the Western Conference with the Mammoth coming into this game. I believe Mammoth were 2 and Jets were 3 up there at the top. So a really massive showdown there, and it delivered. It was close. Jets take the lead 1-0. Mammoth come back with a couple goals. It's 2-1. Jets equalize 2-2 heading into the final period. And if you've paid attention to the Mammoth this season, I think you can already guess what happened in that third period. Tied 2-2. Dylan Guenther happened. Guenther, game winner once again, his 4th game winner of the season. Utah has 8 wins, and Dylan Guenther has won 4 of those with his goals. Fun stat that I spent some time digging into tonight during Sunday Night Football, trying to figure out what his shooting percentage is in the third period. So I found it thanks to Mammoth PR team, David Piper, our guy over there, stats guru. Also comes up with great slogans and taglines for the fun facts on their stat sheets. He's got a whole bank of puns with players' names and all that. So I'll have to pull out a few for you guys next time. But there are some good ones in case if you're not following Mammoth PR on Twitter, go ahead and give them a follow. They got some fun stuff. Well, the stat is this. So on the season, Dylan Guenther, one of the best players on the Utah Mammoth, obviously. Great wing player, a forward, 22 years old, young Guenther. 13.5% shooting percentage overall on the season, which means 13.5% of his shots are turned into goals. It's an okay number. It's, you probably, good to great players are up there closer to 20% maybe. 15 to 20 is probably pretty good, so it's a little low for him. But don't worry, folks, because in the third period and overtime, that shooting percentage jumps up 10 points from 13.5 to 23.5. So the clutch gene is there, Mr. Clutch, Mr. Game Winner, whatever you want to call him. Dylan Guenther is getting it done for the Utah Mammoth. He's already won 4 games from this season, and they've only played 9. So not bad for a young player, 22-year-old out of Edmonton. And that's important because guess who's up next for the Utah Mammoth? Yep, sure enough, the Edmonton Oilers. Runner-up in last year's Stanley Cup Finals. Big test on the road for the Mammoth to finish off this road trip, actually. it's an extended road trip, you might say. That eight of these nine, current games, I guess, are on the road. They play four, they come back for one this upcoming weekend against Tampa, and then they leave for another four. So it's a long road trip with a little breather in between back here at home. But yeah, first, before that breather, they do have to take on Connor McDavid, a perennial MVP candidate, widely seen as the best player in the NHL, in the world, possibly, probably. And that's who they have to face on Tuesday. So a lot at stake for the Mammoth. Obviously, want to keep that top position in both the division, but also in the conference. Great playoff position early for the Mammoth, but also they could get up to an 8-game win streak. And the last time a Utah/Arizona, we're including Arizona in these stats, and I'll tell you why. It's because milestones for a 2-year-old, 18-month old team are not as fun because it's the first time for everything, right? They've only played whatever it is, 92 games, less than 100 games. So not a lot of stats, and the players all came from Arizona to Utah. So we're talking about a lot of the same guys. We're talking about the same trajectory. All the draft picks came with, the general manager, the coach came with. So I think it's okay to carry over these stats. And the last time that this franchise, Arizona/Utah, had 8 wins in a row was February of 2011. So 14 years ago, more than 14 years ago, because, yeah, like I said, it's February of that year. 14 and a half years ago, the Arizona Coyotes back then got 8 wins in a row, made the playoffs that year. They made the playoffs a couple years in that range, in the 2011, 2012 range. So obviously a great sign for a Utah Mammoth team striving to make the playoffs this year. And hey, if they keep playing like this, I'd say they're a shoo-in, looking like one of the best teams in the NHL. And for what it's worth, a couple losses on the season, yes. So I guess it's 10 games total, 8 wins, 2 losses. Both came on the road. One against the Colorado Avalanche, seen as one of the best teams in the league, 2 of the best players in the world, and it was by 1 goal, so a pretty close game. And then they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, who at the time it was not seen as a quote unquote good loss. It was seen as actually a very bad loss because it was the first win of the season for Chicago. Chicago has been a top 10 draft pick team for the last top 5 draft pick team for the last several years, meaning they're not very good because they have a bad enough record to get a top 5 pick consistently. But they're actually looking decent so far. I think they got a loss today against the Kings, but overall, like, Chicago has been in the upper half of the Western Conference for sure. A couple of their players really kind of coming into their own. Obviously, they've got Connor Bedard, a former number 1 pick. But Frankie Nazar also has been playing really well. Donato as well. Donato, I'm not sure how you say that. But they've got some guys who are showing up out there in Chicago at the United Center. I had a chance to visit that place on that road trip that I did a couple weeks ago. Really, really cool place. Obviously, you've got the history there with the Bulls as well. So, man, is that arena just filled with banners and retired jerseys. And fun fact, one of those retired jerseys is none other than former Utah Jazz head coach Jerry Sloan, because he played for the Bulls. So a little fun factoid there for you guys. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, those couple of losses probably aren't as bad as they might have seemed in the moment. And they've won 7 in a row, which is only bested by the New Jersey Devils, who have won 8 in a row. Both those teams are up there at the top of the NHL with 14 points currently. Might be 16. I think it's 16 actually now. My apologies. So great company there. There's been jokes, we're headed for a Mammoth Devils Stanley Cup final, which would be not what people expected, I think. It's early. It's obviously very, very early. 10 games into the season. We've got 72 games to go. So lots more can happen, but good signs nonetheless. And I think the ingredients to what's going on are good as well. I mentioned Dylan Gunther, obviously a very clutch player. But Logan Cooley as well, like I mentioned, scoring great goals. His shooting percentage is fantastic. It's up near 30%, which is just wild for the amount of time that he plays and the number of shots he takes. Obviously, when you score 5 goals in 4 periods like he did the last 2 games, that percentage is going to go up. But Nick Schmaltz also playing really, really well for the Mammoth. And then on the defensive side too, it's not just scoring goals. Obviously, I think they could do a better job defensively. They haven't gotten a shutout yet this season, and they're not near the top as far as the defensive stats a lot of the time. But their goalies are playing really, really well. They've split some time between Karel Vejmelka, Veggie, aka, and Vitek Vanacek, both from the Czech Republic. And they've both been really solid. Top 20 in the NHL in both save percentage and goals against average, which are the kind of the 2 main stats for goaltenders in the NHL. I mean, you think about, if every team plays 2 goaltenders, which they basically do, because the starter doesn't play every game. So you've got 32 teams, so that's 64 goaltenders total. So to be in the top 20, that's pretty good. You're like at least top 30%. Which is a good place to be, especially when you got 2 on your team in that top 30%. So yeah, and then the last piece I will mention is also on the defensive side, which is Nate Schmidt, not to be confused with Nate Schwartz, who has been our guest on this show several times. But Nate Schmidt, a veteran defenseman, 34 years old, came over from the actual Stanley Cup champions, who was the Florida Panthers. And he's been playing great for the Mammoth. He's second on the team in minutes, time on the ice, if you don't count Sean Dursey, who's currently injured. And like I mentioned, he's 34, so he's playing a ton at not a young age, and he's a +8 on the season, which was one of the best plus-minus numbers in the NHL, and consistently is getting in there with, big shots that kind of break things up, get opportunities there in the O-zone. And then and gets assists too, and is just playing solid. Obviously, he plays a lot on the power play as well. He and Mikhail Sergachev, kind of the big defenseman there on the power play for the Mammoth, and they've been doing really well. Sergachev, another goal against the Jets. So both those guys playing super well on different pairings. Sergachev playing with his Russian countryman Dmitry Simashev, a rookie. And then Nate Schmidt playing with John Marino on the second pair. So, but all 4 of those guys playing super well. It's been a lot of fun to watch this team, frankly. Anytime you get to cover a team that wins 7 games in a row, is fun. So hopefully they keep it going. We shall see on Tuesday what happens in Edmonton. And then, like I mentioned, a little break, and they'll be back in action at the Delta Center against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are a pretty good team. They've had a bit of a down start to the season, as has Edmonton, actually. So, it's a bit of this case of, okay, a lot of the teams we thought were going to do well aren't doing well, and the teams that we thought might not be as good are doing really well. Things will average out in the end, I would assume. So we'll see if things average out badly for the Mammoth, if they end up going on a 7-game losing streak at some point. I don't want to speak that into existence. But who's to say, right? It's like I said, it's a long season. Anything can happen. But some big opportunities against teams that are expected to do well this season, which is as good as you can do under the circumstances, especially at this point in the season. So shout out to the Mammoth. Another team, obviously, it's on a win streak. The BYU Cougars football team. It's 8 in a row for them. So I guess I should have started with them because technically that's the better win streak. Might not agree on the strength of schedule, some of the opponents early for BYU. However, that's not the case right now. Like I mentioned, Big 12 play is tough, and BYU has continued to get the job done in the Big 12, most recently on the road at Iowa State. I was going to have our boy Jackson Payne on because he was there. He got to see that game. So we'll have him on later. He's not on tonight, but maybe we can get his input on kind of what went down there. A come-from-behind win, once again, for this team. I think they were down by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And Bear Bachmeier once again finds a way to come alive in the second half, bring it home for the Cougars as a freshman. So things are still going strong there. We'll see how long the Cougars can ride this win streak. I mean, you got 12 games, so you're 2/3 of the way there. You get 4 more, and you're undefeated on the year, and almost certainly going to the college football playoff. So it's in play. I'm not saying it'll happen, but it's in play. Tough games ahead, certainly for the Cougars. You've got Texas Tech on the road, one of the best teams in the Big 12, obviously, considering what they did to the University of Utah when they came here to Salt Lake. A lot of talent there, and will be another really, really tough test for BYU. We'll see if they can get to 9-0. We shall see. Some other big news as far as college football. Utah also got a win over Colorado. Huge, massive blowout win over Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. And possibly because of that, they're getting College Game Day again. Pat McAfee, Nick Saban, and the crew coming out to SLC up on the hill this upcoming weekend for another big game for the University of Utah. Utah taking on Cincinnati in that game on College Game Day. It'll be another top 25 matchup for the Utes as the Utes got back into the top 25 with that win against Colorado, ranked number 24 in the nation. It's kind of an in and out constantly situation, just right on the cusp for the Utes. But Cincinnati ranked number 17, so another fun matchup there, kind of similar to that 23-15 matchup we saw in the rivalry down in Provo last week. BYU up to number 10 in this week's poll, so finally got their top 10 position that everyone thought they were so deserving of. And we shall see next week if they get to 9-0, if they are actually worthy of that. But yeah, huge game for Utah. Currently favored by a touchdown. 7.5 point favorites, Utah at home against Cincinnati. 7-1 Cincinnati. Big 12, top of the Big 12 alongside BYU. So a massive game there, and they're favorites. So we'll see what happens there. You know, you put up 40 something points against Colorado. Yeah, I guess people expect some bigger things out of your team. And we will see what happens. The Utes were without their starting quarterback against Colorado, actually. They brought in Bird Ficklin, freshman backup. Wasn't Isaac Wilson, although he did enter the game later on once the result was in hand. But yeah, Devin Dampier not playing against Colorado. Seems like kind of a minor day-to-day, week-to-week injury. We'll see if he is available for that big game against Cincinnati. So that's it for kind of the big storylines. Obviously, we've got Utah Jazz going on as well. They started the regular season with actually a really impressive win against the Clippers at home at the Delta Center to start things off. So I would say things starting off much more positive for the Jazz than people may have expected. But similar to the Mammoth, long way to go there. Obviously, a very young squad still. And we'll see how Ace Bailey continues to do, that rookie, as he continues to get more minutes. We'll see if things do end up going more the direction like they did last year with resting players like Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, because they both looked really good in that opening game. And I think if you play both those guys, look, I don't want to get on the soapbox too much. I guess this is the place to do it if I'm going to hop on top of the water cooler real quick. I've been saying since Walker Kessler was a rookie, build around Kessler and Markkanen. Those, you got the Twin Towers, you got two big guys that can do 90% of what you need in the NBA, which is defense, threes, and kind of positionless playing a little bit, right? Markkanen can play 2-4/5. Kessler can guard 3-5, a lot of different types of players. The only thing you're really missing is maybe a little bit of playmaking. But, you have those two guys and you find a point guard that can play with them. And I think that's probably the next big challenge. Obviously, Keontae George is probably seen as the closest thing to that. He's started this year off positively. If he can bring down those turnovers and increase his shooting percentage numbers, not take as many bad shots, I think he could possibly become that guy. Obviously got Isaiah Collier as well, who has been a little bit injured. So we shall see what that ends up looking like for the Jazz. But yeah, I think certainly, man, build around those two guys. They're so solid, especially Kessler. I mean, he's still super young. This is his fourth year. He was eligible for an extension in the offseason, and the deadline passed for that extension, and Utah did not reach a deal with him. So he'll be, I believe, a restricted free agent come the summer of 2026. He could go somewhere else. Obviously, the Jazz would probably want to match whatever offer comes in. But we saw what happened with Miles Turner and the Indiana Pacers. He was restricted, but the Milwaukee Bucks offered a number that Indiana didn't want to match. It was such a huge number because Milwaukee waived Damian Lillard and had a bunch of money open up, and they were able to offer a salary that Indiana either couldn't or didn't want to offer. I'm not saying that Walker Kessler is necessarily of that caliber of Miles Turner. I don't think he's too super far off, though. They're actually they're more similar than you might think, Walker Kessler and Miles Turner, especially with Walker Kessler adding the 3-point ball to his game. If that continues, they're super similar. You look at the blocks and threes combo, it's a super rare combination. Obviously, Wemby jumps out too when you talk about that. Hey, if the Jazz could get a guy that's close to Miles Turner and Wemby locked in over the next 5 years, I think you'd probably want to do that. So we'll see what happens with Kessler. That was my takeaway from the opening games for the Jazz was, man, they really should have locked him down in the offseason heading into this season. But hey, maybe, with the contract on the line, maybe that's why he's playing better. Maybe he'll play harder. That's kind of a known thing in pro sports is in a contract year when a guy is, or gal, when a player and when an athlete is poised to be without a guaranteed contract the next year, they want to play really, really well to earn that contract, earn more money, whatever that might be. So, hey, maybe we'll get a really big contract year out of Walker Kessler, and then the Lakers or Knicks will offer him a number that the Jazz don't want to match. I don't want to speak that into existence, but Walker, go get that bag. Get whatever you need. That just about wraps it up for us, folks. Soccer season is pretty much over. RSL bowed out of the playoffs in their first game. 4th year in a row, RSL has not advanced in the playoffs beyond their first matchup. Not a great stat. Utah Royals have their final regular season game this upcoming Sunday, actually same game as the Utah Mammoth game, so not sure I'll be able to make both. But they're also eliminated from the playoffs and will not be going on after that final game. But one fun thing I did find out about that game is they're encouraging Royals fans to bring their dog to the final game at America First Field on Sunday. So if you're a soccer fan and you've got a dog, you've got plans this upcoming Sunday, November 2nd. We'll be firmly out of spooky season by then. You can feel comfortable bringing that pup. If you want to put a costume on it, sure, but it'll be a little late. But as for now, that's all for us, folks, and we will catch you next time.